I can hear all my big communion services have been coming down, right?
I was already went to CVS and I needed my lid dark. My lid dark.
Oh, my goodness. I'm milk chocolate.
I'm 90, but I was too good. I didn't date and I looked this movie in Japan, it's my trade. One, whole thing left. And then that's an intake. That's how it's.
She didn't want to be very next to her sister. So there's one, an empty one in between.
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh my God. This.
Well, that's good. Chocolate is good.
I know.
But you're,
I told. Someday.
yeah, yeah. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Oh, when you're, because you're doing things.
So if I leave you a few minutes before, yeah. And I was afraid she's trying to say, but when you want to have treatment like that, what do you do?
But that's who you are, and so that's, yeah, that's how you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the degree of teacher.
Oh my God, too, right?
Hi, Lee. Good morning. How are you feeling?
Getting better.
Yes.
Are you sick? Lee, were you sick?
I have, since it's still not, I'm not past whatever. I had COVID.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. Besides like the first day, I'd say that it is essentially, it's a cold. I mean, for me, I have the bivalent and all the other things. So, went from Tuesday having 102 and back to normal at 97.9.
Okay.
Good.
That's almost
Glad you're
normal.
better.
You know,
Yeah.
97.9 is normal for me. It's below normal. So when they said it was 102, it was like, oh my God.
Well, I hope you keep feeling better and better and better.
I am. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I don't go anywhere. I don't see anyone. I don't do anything. I'm just
Oh.
here in my little cocoon, you know?
Okay.
That's-
Well,
Good
you're
morning,
joining us
Lisa.
here.
Welcome.
How are you, Rabbi?
Good. Thank you, Glenda.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everyone. Lisa, I don't know if you can hear me. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. We have a new participant today. All right, we'll get started here in just a minute. Let's let everyone finish getting their coffee.
I don't drink coffee.
All right. Okay, Boker Tov, everybody. Good to see you all. Happy New Year. I hope you had a nice week last week. And
Week.
nice week. And now it's 23 and we're back into it. So let's start with our blessing for study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay, so we left off here discussing, we're on page 26 in our prayer book, and this is before the the liturgy starts, although remember that of course we Modeh Ani is the first blessing, which is one that we do in the synagogue. It's the start of our service in the morning minyan, although it is something that is kind of technically meant to be done at home when you first open your eyes. And then before we begin the actual liturgy of the morning, we do the blessing for the talit. Putting on a talit is something that we do in the morning. The talit is worn in morning prayer only, not in evening prayer, but in morning prayer. There's a reason for that, and I think we'll look at that maybe today. So last week we talked, or 2 weeks ago, when last time we met, we talked about Talit in the context of the Reform movement. We looked at statements from the platforms of Reform Judaism and saw some evolution from classical Reform Judaism, which rejected kind of traditional ritual garb and so forth as archaic and out of the the scope of what we were seeking to be in modernity, and then progressing to the most recent platform of Reform Judaism. We saw kind of a re-embrace of traditional practices, and the fact that we have the blessing for Talit here in this book is indicative of where the movement has come, because in the Union Prayer book, from the classical Reform Judaism, that was definitely not there. And notice at the top of page 26, it says, for those who wear talit, because in our movement, of course, we're premised on the principle of individual autonomy, which means that each individual Reformed Jew has the right and the responsibility to make their own religious choices. So a talit is, of course, is one of the 613 mitzvot, but in our religious philosophy, it's up to you as to whether you're going to wear one. You certainly don't have to. I have noticed in my time at Temple Beth-El that it seems pretty common that for our congregants not to wear a talit, although some certainly do. But in any case, I want us to learn a little bit about the mitzvah of talit, because it is part of our liturgy here. And, who knows, it might be something that you decide you want to experiment with if it's not part of your practice already. Okay, so what I want to do today is look at the sources of the mitzvah of talit. Why is this something that we do? To begin with, such that it finds its way here into our morning liturgy, our morning practice. So we're going to start by taking a look at, good morning, Vicki and Courtney. We're going to start by taking a look at the Tanakh, we're going to get into chapter 15 of the book of Numbers. So I'm going to put that up on the screen so that you can follow, because it's there in Numbers chapter 15, where we find the basis for this mitzvah. Okay. And this also, although we're studying this here, you'll see that we'll revisit this passage a little bit later because it's also part of our daily liturgy. But for now, we're just going to look at it as the source of the mitzvah of Talit. So it says here, Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the Israelite people and say to them, oh no, that's not the part. That's a little earlier. Hold on. Let me get to the scroll down to it. Yeah, there's several of these.
You don't have to say, you can go ahead, whatever you want to do. Okay.
Okay, here we are, verse 37. Adonai said to Moses as follows, speak to the Israelite people and instruct them to make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout the ages. Let them attach a cord of blue to a fringe at each corner. That shall be your fringe. Look at it and recall all the commandments of Adonai and observe them, so that you do not follow your heart and your eyes in your lustful urge. Thus you shall be reminded to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I, Adonai, am your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I, your God, Adonai. Okay, so this is the basis for it, an instruction to make fringes to attach to the four corners of our garments. Now, what do you see here that that strikes you as interesting? What questions does it raise for you? What are your thoughts, Linda?
So I'm always.
Wait, hold on one second. Linda's speaking. Go ahead, Linda.
The blue thread that's attached
Yes.
to, I don't have a full understanding of that.
Okay, so Linda is asking about the blue thread. So that's a great question, because if you notice, and I'm guessing that your question is arising from the fact that talitot today that you're familiar with have fringes, but they typically do not have the blue. Okay, so so the blue, let's take a look at this, and I just want to see in the commentary if there's something about it that can help us. If not, I'll just give you a little background on it. Blue. Okay, here it is in Rashi. Okay, so if you look on the screen here over on the right, Rashi's comment on this verse, the blue, techelet is the Hebrew. Techelet means the blue. Rashi says it is the blue dye obtained from the blood of the chilazon, a kind of shellfish. Okay, so that's kind of interesting that it's shellfish, right? So it's not a kosher creature. But in any case, this the cord of blue that's commanded here, Rashi tells us comes. It's created by a particular dye that's derived from this kind of fish. Now, over time, the method of extracting this blood from a chilazon and whatever that even that is, the knowledge of the method was lost. Okay, between sometime in perhaps in the Middle Ages or even before was lost, and so the talitot of our time don't have it because people didn't know how to make the blue cord. Now recently, supposedly the method has been rediscovered, so you can buy fringes that now have the blue cord in them, but that is a recent phenomenon. It maybe it's something to look up I don't think for our purposes today, we need to get too much into the blue cord, but you could look it up online. And it's a new phenomenon, and some people do buy the cord, buy fringes that have the blue cord. But in the main, the talitot, even still that you would go and buy at a Judaica shop or you'd order online or whatever, do not have it. And it's because once that method was lost, it just became normative practice to create fringes without the blue cord. Okay, I see that. You're welcome. There's a question. Shelley, your name is Sidur now. I love how you've adopted the Sidur into your identity.
I have a couple of comments. I think it's interesting that the focus is on the fringe, because today we have so many decorative, beautiful talitot. I mean, I have them myself. I mean, that seems to be where the attention goes, when really it's the fringe that's the important part. And the second thing is that I'm recognizing this from the Ve'ahavta, that we say this passage, I believe, in the morning, but there's no, my question is, there's no reference here to when to wear the talit. It doesn't say just wear it in the morning, only wear it when you lead. And I never know on Yom Kippur afternoon if I'm supposed to wear it or not. So where does they come in?
That's okay. Great questions. So, so your first question was about how do we know when to wear it? So that is derived from the Talmud. We'll look at the Talmudic passage in a few minutes that talks about that. But you're right. Here in the text of the Tanakh, it just says attach fringes to the corners of your garments, which incidentally, and not only incidentally, I guess more than incidentally, is something that that many people do. It's they would wear fringes throughout the day, not only in morning prayer. You would, I'm sure, and certainly walking around Great Neck, you would know this because you see, you'll see men, and it would only be men, really, who you would see with this, with the fringes hanging out of their pants, right? Just walking around. Okay, so what's going on there, if you're not familiar with it, is that those gentlemen who are wearing that are wearing a garment underneath their shirt, which is it's like a little shawl, and it's got the fringes attached to it, and they wear it all day. That's called a talit katan. Talit katan is an undergarment to wear so that the fringes can be worn every day. The talit worn in prayer that we put on, a shawl or it wraps around our neck or around our backs or whatever, is referred to as talit gadol. Talit gadol means a big talit. Talit katan means a small talit. It's the talit gadol that we typically wear during prayer, so that we have fringes. And this all ties in with the time of day, but it also ties in with something that's particular about the statement in the verse that I want to raise up. I want to see if you guys can figure it out as to why talit katan, talit gadol are required. The other thing, before we get into that, which I think is the main issue, the other thing I want to comment on is what Shelley had said about where the focus is. So you're right, Shelley, that today, talitot come in so many beautiful designs. There are talit makers, Gabrielli is one that you might be familiar with. Lots of people wear their talitot. Mine are from Gabrielli. They're in Israel. They make talitot with all kinds of colors and designs and patterns and so forth. And people will tend to choose them because they love the look of the garment itself. But actually, as Shelley points out correctly, the essence of the mitzvah is in the fringes. What the garment looks like or is irrelevant, except for one thing, which we have to get to, that you're seeing here. But the look of the garment is of no consequence to the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to have fringes on the corners of your garments. So, for instance, when I'm, talking with bar and bat mitzvah students, and they're getting to wear a talit for the first time or not, I say to them that we look at the fringes, and I say that the fringes, this is the reason why we have a talit to begin with. It's not because the talit is good looking or it matches with our outfit or anything like that. It's because of the fringes. Now, what do you notice here in the passage that is essential, an essential piece of this mitzvah, other than the fringe itself, that then leads us to put on a talit and some people to wear a talit katan? Howard.
Not sure if this is why you're getting in. Maybe I cheated a little. The week before you became our rabbi, you'll recall that Frank Abrams and I led the Rebellion service, and this was the hard job. And so I studied a little. And so one thing we kind of overlook, it refers to the corners of your garments.
Right.
So there are four places.
Yes.
Two in the front and two in the back.
Yeah.
So that's 4 sets of fringes with 4 blue boards, right?
Right.
And then when we, I don't know when this tradition developed, but as you know, because I see you do it every morning, every weekday morning, when we sing Bahavienu, and we sing "Gather Us from the Corners of the Earth," that's when it's traditional to grab the fringes from each part and bring them together.
Right. Yes. So Howard is, yeah, Courtney, go ahead. Sorry. Courtney, will you project a little out? Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing up the corners, because right away I got all excited right now. It wasn't so after my thinking. But I also think like can it be that was almost like almost part of the composite self. You're clothing yourself in it, and then just different facets of what it is to be human, to be more spiritual. I'm wondering.
I love that. That's a beautiful kind of homiletical reading. The 4 corners represents the totality of self. Beautiful. And that's a really nice way to think about, when you have a talit on, and what does it mean to be kind of embraced in the fullness of self and in the fullness of God and so forth. I love that, Courtney. I want to the kind of on the more logistical / plain meaning level of things, the issue of the corners is the significant thing, which Howard had pointed out, because notice that the mitzvah here is to make fringes on the corners of your garment. If your garment has corners, it needs to have fringes on it. But if your garment doesn't have corners, there's no need for fringes. The clothes that we wear don't have corners, really, right? I mean, like, I don't know, maybe if you have a poncho or something, it does, but like, it may have been in ancient times that the clothes that people wore had corners, but the clothes that we wear today don't typically have corners, which is why, our clothes, and even amongst the most, Orthodox people you see walking around Great Neck, they don't have fringes like on their sleeves or anything, because those aren't corners. The only clothing that requires fringes is garments that have corners. So if you're not wearing a garment with corners, then you have no obligation in that mitzvah. The reason people wear a talit or wear a talit katan under their clothes is so that they can do the mitzvah. Does that make sense? The talit katan is a shirt kind of thing. It's a little poncho. It's a little thing that actually has 4 corners on it. So men who do this mitzvah will put the talit katan on so that they're wearing something that has corners, so that then they have the opportunity to do the mitzvah. That's why. And then it hangs from their pants only because they created the situation for themselves in which the mitzvah is required. We put on a talit for prayer in the morning. Again, so that we can create a situation where we get to do the mitzvah. Because if we're not wearing something with corners, you don't have to have fringes. The talit for morning prayer is a way to elevate yourself by giving yourself the opportunity to do another mitzvah. Does that make sense? Okay, so this kind of points to an issue in halakha, or a way of thinking about halakha, which is to ask the question of to what does a given mitzvah pertain? Does the mitzvah pertain to the person, or does the mitzvah pertain to the thing? Okay, it's a subtle distinction that you may or may not have thought about until now, but it is an issue. In this case, with the talit, the mitzvah pertains to the thing, not to the person. In other words, a person is not obligated to wear fringes. A garment that has 4 corners is obligated to have fringes. That's a distinction. Do you see the distinction? Okay, so Susan, you've been waiting to talk. Yeah, go ahead.
Is something concrete, and it's a reminder. And what I feel is that sometimes you need something concrete in the beginning as a reminder, and hopefully as you get more spiritual or so forth, you don't have to have that. The reminder will be instinctive then. So sometimes concrete, like when you give a star on the paper,
Yeah.
the child works for the star, and eventually this child will work for. I keep talking about what I've done, but then hopefully the child will work just to learn. So maybe the talit is something concrete to get you started on the spirituality.
Okay, that's a really interesting comment, Susan, and you find, and this definitely has echoes in the tradition. So notice here in the passage, it says, attach the fringes to the corners of the garment. That shall be your fringe. Look at it and recall the commandments and observe them. So the fringes are there to be a concrete reminder. Now, your point about to start you off and then eventually you internalize. So this is something that there are 2 important thinkers in Judaism who embrace this idea. One of them is Rambam, Maimonides. Okay, so Maimonides said, not talking specifically about fringes, but just talking about the Torah generally. And Maimonides said that his philosophy was that human beings are, we begin our lives and maybe live well into our adulthood, or maybe the entirety of our adulthood, as spiritual children. Okay, meaning that like children, we need carrots and sticks and so forth in order to do what we're supposed to do. So he writes about this in the context of, why does the Torah have all these like punishments if you don't do stuff and rewards if you do it? He said, because we're spiritual children and we need like, do this or else you're going to lose your phone. Do this or else you're grounded for a week, right? And if you do it, you're going to get candy. If you do it, you're going to get toys. Okay, incentives to do things, which in his mind is serving God out of fear. Okay, you do what you're supposed to do, because if you don't, you're going to get into trouble. But then the higher level of being that Maimonides wrote about is serving God out of love. Serving God out of love, as he says, like, eventually, the aim is that you're going to learn that to do these mitzvot is something that you do just because it's God's will, because it's the right thing, because it's what God wants you to do. And you don't need incentives like punishments or rewards. You'll just do it. Okay. That's, for Maimonides, that's the journey towards spiritual maturity. Not to say that Maimonides would say, like, once you get to that point, you don't have to wear a tallit anymore. You still do. But that's his kind of philosophy of the spiritual journey of a person. Second person that I want to mention here is Spinoza. I mean, have you guys heard of Spinoza? So Spinoza lived in the 17th century in the Netherlands. And Spinoza's theory of the Torah was that the Torah was, paraphrasing him, I don't remember exactly the language he used, but this is the idea, that the Torah was designed as a system of training for the Jewish people during their national life in the land of Israel. And that its purpose was to teach us kind of how to live as a people and a sovereign people. And then in Spinoza's time, when the Jewish people are in exile and the diaspora and so forth, he said a lot of this stuff, like, you don't need any. Okay, it was for Spinoza, many of the mitzvot of the Torah and the rules of the Torah were training wheels to teach you how to do it. What happened to Spinoza in his time? He was excommunicated. Exactly. Okay, Spinoza was excommunicated because the rabbis and leaders of his community at his time saw him as a heretic. Okay, now a lot of people in the modern age, see things the way Spinoza did, but in his time he was considered to be a heretic and he was excommunicated. So hold on, there were a couple of hands online. Lisa, go ahead.
Okay, I have to unmute. How are you, Rabbi? I'm so
Welcome,
sorry.
Lisa.
Knowledge. The tallit, at least from what I've learned, is supposed to be worn as a reminder of the mitzvot, and it's to be put on every single morning. It's also referenced in the Shema.
Right.
As well as the mezuzot on the doorposts. So it's one of the fundamental aspects of being a Jew. And the practice is when you look down, you're reminded of the 613 commandments. So it becomes part of you. And I thought it was interesting that you said the garment is what it is, but it doesn't make the person. But I think it, in my opinion, it's kind of all one blend, because it becomes yours and it becomes something that you do on a daily basis, like putting on clothes, putting on a kippah, in reference to the observance of God and the observance of Torah. Unless I've learned wrong, that's basically what it's about. I don't wear a tallit. It doesn't mean that I don't acknowledge it. I think it's a beautiful garment and a really good reminder of who we are.
Yeah, for sure. You're right. And it does say here in the text that, look at it and remember the commandments and do them. It's there to be a reminder. I didn't say that the talit doesn't make a person or anything. What I said was that the mitzvah the mitzvah applies to the garment,
Yes.
not to the person.
So I
That's the
question.
distinction.
I
Yeah.
have a question related to that. Why do some people walk with the talit in the street and I understand the small one, the fringes that you wear every single day underneath your clothing. Why
Yeah.
why do some men walk with the talit in the street over their clothing? Isn't
Yeah.
it, do you know a reason why anybody would do that?
I don't. I haven't read anything about it. I mean, I would imagine that it's. I've seen that. Say like
I've
on
only seen it
Shabbat,
so I don't know
on
why.
high holidays, or on Shabbat, or on Yom Kippur.
I see it on
It
Shabbat,
may be,
but I don't get it.
well, it may be just something about kind of beautifying the day, of Shabbat. It's kind of elevating Shabbat over the ordinary, because if you're wearing the talit katan all the time, it's ordinary,
Yes.
in the sense that if you do it every day. So on Shabbat, maybe someone would want to wear the full talit to just kind of distinguish the clothing that you wear on Shabbat from what you wear ordinarily. There's a so I don't know about that specifically, but I'm linking it in my mind to another practice that you might observe. People who are wearing the talit like that in the street, many times you would see them also wearing a big fur hat. Okay, those people tend to do that. So what does anybody know what the fur hat is called? A shtreimel. Yeah. Okay, it's called a shtreimel. Okay, now there's a teaching from, I don't know where it originated, but I learned it, I think maybe the Khatam Sofer, a kind of the father of contemporary Haredi Judaism from Hungary. Maybe it was him or maybe somebody else. Anyway, said about the shtreimel. Haredi men wear shtreimel on Shabbat. Okay. And the Khatam Sofer or somebody else in that school said about shtreimel that you take the word Shabbat, shin bet taf in Hebrew. That's how we spell Shabbat. And the teaching was that Shabbat could perhaps stand for, if you made it an acronym, shtreimel bifnei tefillin. Okay, which means shtreimel in the place of tefillin. Okay, so tefillin, we're gonna learn about that next because it's in the prayer book next. Tefillin is the boxes with the scrolls in it that go on the head and on the arm. Tefillin are worn on weekdays, but not on Shabbat, because the tefillin are. The Torah says the tefillin are a sign of the covenant between God and the Jewish people. The Torah also says that Shabbat, the day itself, is a sign of the covenant between God and the Jewish people. So the halakha says you don't wear tefillin on Shabbat because the day itself is already serving the function of reminding you of the covenant between God and the Jewish people. So the idea of shtreimel bifnei tefillin, we're not wearing tefillin. Tefillin sits on the head. It's like the crown on your head, but you're not wearing tefillin on Shabbat. So the teaching was, instead of the tefillin, to kind of glorify the head and beautify, you wear the shtreimel instead. So maybe the wearing of the full talit in the street on Shabbat is similar to that, like the shtreimel, just like we're beautifying the head by wearing the shtreimel, you're also kind of beautifying the body by adding the full talit. That's just speculation, but anyway. Okay, so Shelley and then Vicky. Go ahead, Shelley.
Oh, that was so interesting, Rabbi. I never knew that. So it talks about fringes, and I had the pretty amazing experience after wearing Tali Tot of creating my own. It took about a year to figure it all out and what I wanted to put on the Atara. And I have a lot of beautiful scarves with fringes, but they're not they're not a talit. I learned that there's a certain way you have to wrap and then knot. And if you remember, I asked people that are important in my life to do that. And you and Rabbi Kadar and 2 others when you were at BJBE did that for me. But again, I don't see that here. Not any fringe will do. The fringe of your scarf, I mean, it's nice, but it's not the fringe they're talking about. So is that also from the Talmud, where you have to wrap it and then knot it?
The way of doing the tzitzit, yeah, that's in the halachic literature about how specifically they need to be tied and so forth. You're right. There is a particular way of creating the fringe in compliance with halakha, how they have to be wrapped and knotted and whatnot. So not just any kind of ordinary fringes that, you know, you might buy in a scarf at Nordstrom or something doesn't fulfill that mitzvah. So you're right. Vicky, go ahead. Vicky, do you mind? Yeah, that's okay.
Beautifies the Shabbat and so forth. Image of, you know, on Friday nights when we welcome the Shabbat bride, and you know, and the idea of beautifying, it's sort of, to me, it goes with that image of, you know, the bride and celebration, and it just carries it through.
Yeah.
And my other, please correct me, but I think that there are different kinds according to the set of
Yeah.
you know, there are different sets among the what do you call them?
The Haredim. Yeah.
The hat identifies that.
Yeah. In terms of how it looks.
Yeah. Did you say that when Jews are in exile, that they don't need this?
No, it wasn't that he said that they didn't need it. But his idea was that the Torah was written. First of all, I believe that Spinoza talked about the Torah as being created by human beings, which was the main thing that was a heresy. But he said that the Torah was written specifically to apply to a particular setting, okay, which was the life of the Israelites in the land after they came through the wilderness. Not I don't know what he said about like its applicability but that it was a time-bound text. Whereas the official line that he was a heretic against was that Torah is eternal. It was revealed by God at Mount Sinai and it transcends time and place. That was his heresy. Courtney, go ahead.
I mean, to separate the thing with the corners, if we look at so much of, you know, even as a culture and religion, we have the Star of David.
Yeah.
What Susan pointed out was like, in a child, we're looking at that inner child voice, we're looking at that star. Again, corners, if you look at Egyptians, the pyramid, it's all pointing. And the spiritual standpoint, my own view of that is pointing towards God, towards His purpose. And it's always upwards. You don't really see the triangle, the formation on the bottom. They might be like, you know, all around the star, but I think that you know, it's interesting how, or even in a Christmas tree, have a star on top. You know, there's different, like seeking that point.
Yeah. Oh, okay, good. I like that. Very nice, Courtney. Yeah.
David has a triangle up and down.
Yeah.
So what pointed out to me, he has, I'm going to go over, but it has a meaning to it.
Yeah.
Works for me, as it is above is below. But I was also thinking about what Rambam said about how you need encouragement to wear the talit for you to experience more spirituality. I take it opposite point of view. I think that the more spiritual you become, the more you want to wear
Yeah,
it. And I think that in terms of kids, I always think when I have done training for teachers, mainly, is that to teach the kids to do things because they believe in it. It's to teach them to do their behavior intrinsically. That is not an outside. Because when you teach a child to reward, what he teaches them is fear. But if you teach them to internalize the behavior you want, that is the right way to go. And I think that's what it is in terms of the more spiritual you become, I think that the more you want to wear the talit and not the other way around.
yeah, okay, very nice. And look, I don't want to mischaracterize Rambam. He did not say that like when you get to be a certain level of spiritual, you don't need to wear talit and stuff. He wasn't even talking about talit. He was just talking about why the Torah speaks in the language of reward and punishment and the spiritual evolution of a human being. And I just thought of it because of Susan talking about rising. But no, yes, the idea in Rambam is moving from a place of serving God from fear to a place of serving God from love, meaning serving God from love is doing the mitzvot because just out of sheer love for God, not because it's going to get you some reward or not doing it is going to bring some consequence. It's just doing it because as a gesture of love toward God, period. Okay, Howard, and then Susan.
And thinking about the blue fringe and also what Martha was just saying, I think it's really remarkable that so many years ago, there's this wisdom that an object can mean so, it can trigger our brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, we have in the Ten Commandments, right at the beginning, there, thou shalt have no graven images of God. But I mean, think of all the symbols and objects just in this building that we relate to and that are so meaningful to people. Sports fans with their team's uniform and logos, and I mean, in every walk of life, there are these symbols and objects that motivate us and get us going in a positive or negative way. And here, the blue fringe, right, thousands of years ago, it was recognized that an object might be needed to get our minds in a certain place.
Right, yeah, absolutely. The tangibility and concreteness. We human beings need that to remember. So I like to talk about this with bar mitzvah kids too, with respect to the fringe, but also you kind of generally more to the point with respect to the mezuzah, because a mezuzah on the door serves the same function. So I think, okay, so here's a question. In the course of your life, in your at work or at home or whatever, your daily life, and there's something that you need to do. You need to run an errand, you need to take care of something. If you tell yourself like, oh, I need to do this, and you say like, okay, I know I need to do this, I'll remember it. What happens quite frequently for you? That you forget, right? You forget to do it. So in order to ensure that we remember, we write it down, right? So we might write it in our phone these days, I still use Post-it notes. Lots of people remember like we had Post-it notes. You put it somewhere so that you see it and you remember like, oh yeah, I got to do that thing, right? Because if we just rely on our own internal memory, or feeling or whatever, we're very apt to forget. So we write it down. So the mezuzah, I think of as essentially the Torah's version of a Post-it note. Right? Like you stick it on your doorpost because like every time you walk in and out of the door, you see it, and you're like, oh yeah, I got to do that stuff. Right? The mitzvot. I have these responsibilities, got to do mitzvot. Because if you just tell yourself like, yeah, I'll do mitzvot, I got it, you're gonna forget. Okay, same thing with the fringes, just serve the same kind of purpose. I put it on when I'm in prayer to draw my attention, to remember it. Notice like a lot of people, I certainly do this, the fringes are so tangible and like sensory, you know, and you take it and kind of like rub your fingers on it, or you look, the Torah itself says, look at the fringe with our eyes, all as a reminder. I'm going to show you something from the Talmud in a minute. Hopefully we'll get to it, of a story where this plays out. Okay, exactly in the reminder function. Okay, so let's see, hold on. It was Susan was wanting to comment.
When I was at Columbia Teachers College, we studied Rambam. We studied him.
Oh, really?
Yes. He was like the core of how you get children to learn. So this is just a comment.
Oh, okay. Yeah, very cool. All right, so before we take more comments, I just want to, I'm still going back to the question that Shelley had asked about how do we know when to wear the tallit? So let me show you something from the Talmud. This is from Brachot, which is the volume of the Talmud dealing with prayer. And it comes from the Mishnah. It's right here. The Mishnah is asking the question, from when does one recite Shema in the morning? Okay, so this is how the Talmud begins with the same question about, but how do you know when to say it at night? Then after they have the discussion of Shema in the evening, it goes into Shema in the morning. When is it time to say the Shema? If there's a mitzvah to say Shema in the morning, which we learn because we derive it from say it when you lie down and when you get up. Okay, so when is that? All right, the functional question here is, when does morning begin? Okay, that's the question that they're getting.
At the bottom.
Oh, is it? Oh, in our prayer book. Oh, I didn't even have to go look it up. Very nice. Okay, it is. The note is given there for you on the bottom of page 27 in our prayer book, right by the Talit blessing. Look how useful Mishkan Tefillah is, right? That's cool. Our prayer book gives us not only kind of poetry and traditional texts or whatever, but also source material so that we can look at it and understand. Anyway, so let's look at what it says here in the Talmudic passage. Okay, and we'll just read it. Yeah, okay. From when does one recite the Shema in the morning? From when a person can distinguish between sky blue, techelet, that's the blue in the Torah, that's the cord in the fringe. When a person can distinguish between techelet and white. Rabbi Eliezer says from when one can distinguish between techelet, sky blue, and leek green. Okay, and then it goes on here, it's ellipses, but then it says in here in our prayer book, when you can distinguish, from the time you can distinguish a friend from a distance of 4 cubits. Perhaps the new day begins when you can recognize the face of your brother or sister. Okay, so this is all drawn from this Talmudic passage here. So what is this passage teaching us about mourning, or about the function of mourning and the place of mourning in our lives? M-O-R-N-I-N-G. Say again, Courtney?
It's a renewal.
It's renewal. Yeah.
And that allows for, like, with the dogs, for example,
that they're most highly talented, because we're lacking that reinforcement. It's not really still in that like the way human is.
Okay. Definitely true of my dog, because he never gets it. And
Society,
uh,
that work out, you know, that's.
I don't know, that's good. Courtney, you're very good at offering interpretive, I love it, that's great. This is how we make meaning. I don't know, I mean, the word for fringes here is tzitzit, which is translated as fringes, but I don't know that in the Hebrew language, fringe in the sense of fringe of society is the same word in Hebrew, but it's a nice teaching. Here's what I want to show you. Yeah, so Courtney talked about mourning as renewal. So that's really nice. Think about the transition from whatever that moment is, but when it happens from night, which is when it's dark and you can't see the person in front of you, you can't tell the difference between colors, it's dark. Then there comes a moment when that changes. And at that split second, whatever it is, it's hard, you can't put it on a clock or anything, but there happens in the flow of time that it goes from you can't see a person's face or distinguish their features or distinguish colors, and then you can. Okay, that for the Talmud is when mourning begins. And it's about the ability to distinguish, that's also in one of the blessings in the daily miracles, is to distinguish between day and night. We're blessing, one second, Linda, blessing to be able to distinguish when you're in darkness and you can't see anyone or distinguish features or distinguish colors, you're living in isolation, as it were, right? It's just your life is it's just yourself. Mourning brings community, interrelationship with the world around you. All of a sudden, whenever that split second happens, you realize again that you are part of something else, part of something outside of yourself. Okay, that's the key. So here, notice that they're defining mourning in the Talmud by saying it's the moment when you can distinguish between techelet and white. But when you can tell the difference between blue and white is the awakening to the fact that there's a world around you, that you're part of something else. That's when we proclaim the Shema. That's when mourning begins. And that's why the talit, the fringes, are worn at this time in the morning, because you have to be able to distinguish between the blue cord and the white. Does that make sense? Okay, so in that respect, the talit has another function. It's not only reminding us of the mitzvot, it's also reminding us or kind of there to help cultivate awareness of our interrelationship with the world around us. If you can't see the difference between colors, there's no point in wearing a talit. That's why we wear it in the morning. Okay. Now, was it Vicky or Courtney you had hand? Linda. Sorry, Linda, go ahead.
I was going to say about the reason for the blue thread included with the white.
Yeah, right. So without the blue, we're actually missing a little something that's essential.
So
But
that really rounds it out.
It does, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, now I want to show you another passage from the Talmud that deals with the reminder feature. I just need to look it up to see exactly which page it is. So just give me a second. Oh, whoops. Sorry. I'm not at the place in my life where I memorize every page where things are in the Talmud, but so I need to look it up. Okay, there it is. 44. Okay, so let's go to, I'm gonna hook 44. Let me share it for you. I'm sorry, guys, on Zoom. I'm gonna put it back up. Here, what I'm doing is just going into the Talmud to find this passage. 44. Oh, interesting. Look, when you go look up something else in the Talmud, you find other things. Here on this passage, it also talks about the chilazon. That's the source of the blue dye. See what it says. The sages taught this chilazon, which is the source of the sky blue dye used in ritual fringes, has the following characteristics. Its body resembles the sea. Its form resembles that of a fish. It emerges once in 70 years.
Oh, wow.
And with its blood, one dyes wool sky blue for ritual fringes. It is scarce and therefore it's expensive. Okay, so we learned a little bit. Okay, so this is the story I wanted to show you. It's a great story. Okay, there was an incident involving a certain man who was diligent about the mitzvah of ritual fringes. This man heard that there was a prostitute in one of the cities overseas who took 400 gold coins as her payment. He sent her 400 gold coins and fixed a time to meet with her. When his time came, he came and sat at the entrance to her house. The maidservant of that prostitute entered and said to her, "That man who sent you 400 gold coins came and sat at the entrance." She said, "Let him enter." He entered. She arranged 7 beds for him, 6 of silver and 1 of gold. Between each and every one of them, there was a ladder made of silver, and the top bed was the one that was made of gold. She went up and sat naked on the top of the bed, and he too went up in order to sit naked facing her. In the meantime, his 4 ritual fringes came and slapped him on his face. He dropped down and sat himself on the ground, and she also dropped down and sat himself on the ground. She said to him, "I take an oath by the Gappa of Rome that I will not allow you to go until you tell me what defect you saw in me." He said to her, "I take an oath by the temple service that I never saw a woman as beautiful as you. But there is one mitzvah that the Lord our God commanded us, and its name is ritual fringes." And in the passage where it's commanded, it says twice, "I am the Lord your God." The doubling of this phrase indicates I'm the one who will punish those who transgress my mitzvot, and I am the one who will reward those who fulfill them. Now, said the man, the 4 sets of ritual fringes appeared to me as if they were 4 witnesses who will testify against me. So think of the scene, right? The guy wears his talit katan, he's got his fringes, he's climbing up, and the fringes are bouncing around and slaps him in the face. What are you doing? You're about to transgress the mitzvah. And it's the fringes that remind him of, oh my gosh, this is what I'm not, something I'm not supposed to do. So it's a great story. It's a very tangible kind of a thing. Like, look, we know intellectually or in our hearts, like certain things that are right and wrong, certain things that we're supposed to do, but it's very easy to forget them or to get caught up in the moment or to pursue, things that are not really the right thing to do, but they're exciting or whatever, lust, right? And that's what this guy's doing. And were it not for the tzitzit that he was wearing, he would have gone through with it. So the tzitzit actually came here and served its function of remember the commandments of God. Yeah, and actually that's why back to our passage in Numbers, the source of the mitzvah of tzitzit. Let's go back to it. It says here, okay, the fringes, will look at them, you'll remember the commandments, and it says, look, this shall be your fringe, look at it and recall all the commandments of Adonai and observe them, so that you do not follow your heart and eyes in your lustful urge.
Yes.
That's the purpose that's given in the Torah for why we're wearing tzitzit. The story in the Talmud illustrates. Okay, Mel, go ahead, and then we're going to wrap up.
A little bit off the topic, but I'm on a topic. I'm reading a book about Sigmund Freud having been rescued from Vienna. And also the book has a lot of, some like Freud theory about, sexuality and repression.
Mhm.
And it's Freud, of course, the atheist. I guess he didn't wear the
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, Vicky. Yeah.
You're right, because trying to, I mean, we're just talking about one little thing. As a reminder of God, whatever blessing there is, and everything is, considered a blessing. And I don't know, I mean, there's just such a difference when you think of it. And how could, we put the learning and all the meaning that goes into just the, I don't use the talit, okay? But they have all these bits to, and I can't help but think that there has to be some, it becomes rote. They're not really thinking, I don't think of God. I think they just know they're supposed to do these things, and but their awareness is so much more than animals.
Well, it's hard to get into people's heads, and so we don't know. But that is definitely the theory anyway. The theory of the mitzvot here is that it is they are all encompassing and constantly before us, every minute. I mean, one of the Psalms that is often read at funerals says Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid, meaning I set God before me always. Okay, so the wearing of fringes and kippah and all these things that we do, having a mezuzah on our door and all the mitzvot throughout the day. Yes, the theory behind it is that God is present, and reminders of God, to draw our attention toward God, is present at every second. How that plays out in people's lives, we can't say.
Company by some kind of mitzvah, and
Yeah.
It's all I'm saying. The thing that I wrote, that wasn't my point, it was just an aside. But I just think it's interesting that there are so many that they have to fill. There's this constant reminder of God for them. And for us, really, if we don't go to synagogue, I mean, none of this, it's just not there.
Well, okay, so good point. So here, look, I'm glad that you said us, because not just them. Here's the difference that, all of the mitzvot of the tradition are available to us no less than they are to Orthodox Jews. The difference in religious philosophy is that whereas Orthodoxy says, like, these are obligatory for you, and it's enforced theoretically by an external, authority that you have to do it. For us, our religious philosophy is premised on individual autonomy. So the authority, there's no external authority requiring us to do anything, but within our own self, you can definitely choose to do these mitzvot if you want. If you want to wear a talit in prayer, wear it. If you want to wear a talit katan and have fringes on you at all times, do it. there's nothing preventing us as Reformed Jews from doing mitzvot. It's our choice. And that's why we're learning. That's the purpose of learning for us is to explore, understand the mitzvot, reasons for them, and ideas that we find compelling, and then experiment and try things. Okay, last comment, Martha, then we got to finish.
That's evolving. That it's your choice. And in terms of doing things because we want to.
Yeah,
Those who want to do it is internal, not because of fear, but because you want it.
right.
And I think that's what Reform Judaism is so, has evolved in a way that we continue to thrive as Jews.
Yeah, good, very nice. Yes, okay, so couple things. First, I want to ask you to mark your calendars in 2 weeks from today. We are bringing a candidate for assistant rabbi to our temple for 2 weeks from today. She will be here, this candidate, and she's going to be at the morning minyan, and she's going to be guest teaching this class. And then at the end of the class, we're going to have a brunch in here. And so I want to ask all of you, if you can, to be here in person, so that she will have a group of people to teach and you'll get to meet her and everything and have brunch with her. Please do it. That'll help in our, our process and recruiting. Yes, Howard.
Co-chaired 2 assistant rabbi search committees. And we tend to forget that it's not just the student rabbi who's trying to impress us to get a job, but they have plenty of choices. Even in the New York area, they have choices. And we'd like to think that Temple Beth-El is the greatest synagogue in the world, but so does everybody else. And it is so important for us to sell ourselves to these candidates. That's the difference between who gets the outstanding candidates and who doesn't. And for us to be here in force and to show enthusiasm is so critical to the success of this.
Thank you, Howard. Perfectly said. So if you can be here, please do. Thank you. And there'll be a brunch for everyone at the end with bagels and lox and all kinds of good stuff. And next week when we meet, we're going to continue our discussion of Talit, and we're going to talk about the question of gender with respect to Talit, which is a really interesting question. All right. So everyone have a great day.
Great class.
Bye.
So interesting.
I'm so glad. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you later.
Bye.
Really.